Today I'm going to talk to you about identity, and particularly digital identity, because identity as we know it is broken, and it's badly broken. None of us know who has our information. None of us have any control over our information. None of us are able to manage our information, and we have no idea of what's good or bad when it's out there. And that needs to get fixed. So let's look at the context that we're coming at this from. Today we prove our identities using paper credentials. So passports, driving licenses, ID cards, bits of plastic that we carry around with us that are issued to us at a moment in time. They are regularly out of date, held by parties we do not trust, sold for significant sums of money on the internet. We see this world changing, especially as blockchain and smart contracts start to come into play, where we need to move to an ecosystem that allows the real-time checking of somebody's identity, and that means being able to see against an authority somewhere who is able to attest that you really are who you say you are. And generally that means a government, a utility, somebody who has a piece of information that they generated originally for you. And we need to be able to do that in real time. Right now, when I need to check something, I need to be able to go to a government and validate that whatever piece of information I seek to verify is true. So we're building a network that has identity providers on one side, government agencies, banks, utilities. I am not going to mention social media because you cannot trust anything that is written on social media. And relying parties on the other side who need to verify stuff that you give to them about you. Okay? We want to build a network that deals with information that governments need for their citizens, that companies need for their businesses, and that individuals need for their lives. So we want to try and reduce friction, reduce criminal activity, reduce fraud, whether it's tax fraud, identity fraud, payment fraud, and probably most of us in this room have been touched in some way or another by some kind of criminality that's happened on the web, whether it's a payment that has gone wrong, or something has ended up going through your credit account that it wasn't you, or you bought something on the web and you got the wrong thing delivered and you were never able to get restitution. We've all been touched by it, and we need to be able to fix it. We also need to get control of our information. I want to know who has my information, and I want to be able to say, you should not have that. Delete it, please. There's a huge opportunity here. Identity is a revenue generator for the people who need to know who you are, pay significant sums of money today. Any regulated industry, like a bank, credit union, telcos, any of these regulated services need to know who you are, and they pay identity providers significant sums of money in order to get mediocre at best information back, because they have no idea of knowing the provenance of that information. Where did it come from originally? Can I trust it? And the answer to that in most cases is no. But they're able to say to a regulator, we've gone through the process. High assurance environments where I need to know that, for example, a person getting on an airplane really is the person who I think is getting on that airplane. For example, today in the United States, and I don't mean to scare you, you could get on an airplane with a fake driver's license because it's not checked. There's no means for the person at the gate to put the driving license on a scanner and verify that it really is legit. We're still relying on paper, and we've got to get rid of that. And then blockchains. The whole decentralized economy is going to drive a whole new wave of innovation around the tokenization, essentially, of everything. And that needs underlying foundational infrastructure put in place that allows us to identify the participants. But there are some problems with blockchain. Privacy is one of them. I don't want all my stuff listed on any blockchain forever so that anybody can see what my business is. I want it private And I want it obfuscated so that people can't see that I bought something for $1 or $1 million. Today, they can. And I think the technology companies aren't paying enough attention to this. In Europe, we have a thing called GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And every company in Europe is terrified of it because the fines, if you fall foul of it, are huge. 4% of global revenue, or $20 million, whichever is higher. So putting any kind of personal information into a blockchain is a problem because you can't erase it. And one of the rights you have as a European citizen is to request erasure of your information. And if you can't erase it, you've just broken the law straight away. But we've solved it because we figured out how to anonymize information that's put into a blockchain so that it isn't covered by GDPR and it doesn't fall foul of any privacy legislation. And this is the key. Make it anonymous before you put it in. Then you don't have to take it out. And we do this with a thing called zero-knowledge proof. And zero-knowledge is a cryptographic protocol that allows information that two parties hold to be matched, compared, without ever sharing the actual information that either party has. So I can figure out that I have what you have, or not, without ever sharing what I have. And that's pretty cool if you're a bank and you need to share something with the government, or a healthcare provider and you need to verify it with a doctor, where you're actually not allowed to share the information that you need to verify. So using this protocol, we figured out how to join this ecosystem up. Okay? So anybody now can verify anything they have with anybody else, but the integrity of the information is never compromised. And we're looking at rolling this out in a phased way, where we start a big organization, where, let's say a bank, where a bank will have multiple lines of business. Private banking, credit cards, retail, whatever it is. And the rules say you cannot share information with one line of business, between one line of business and another line of business, which just pisses the customer off. It's really frustrating. Well, if there was a mechanism that allowed that information transfer to happen, where I could verify pieces of information, yep, I've got the right guy. Now I just need to get a consent from him, which is a push notification on his phone to say, yep, transfer this information, please. We can now move the information through the form of a token rather than moving the actual information itself. So the whole thing moves from being an information exchange exercise to being a consent management exercise. The information itself stays with the original source. So we've built a complete stack. Bunch of APIs connecting data providers in different places to relying parties in other places, and ultimately connecting this to public blockchains so that we have evidence, not truth, evidence that something happened at a certain moment in time. Blockchains are not truth machines, yet listening to a lot of people, you would think that they are. If it's in a blockchain, you can believe it. No, you can't. It's just evidence that something happened at a moment in time based on information, data that was gathered and put into that blockchain. Garbage in, garbage out. So we've won a ton of awards for the technology. The one I'm most proud of is World Economic Forum selected us as a technology pioneer, which put us in the same category of some of the most well-known names in the technology world. We're a bit behind them in terms of scale, but Google, Twitter, Facebook, all of these guys were tech pioneers. And we can say we're in the same category, because we are. We're just a little bit smaller. When we've got a rich opportunity pipeline with financial services companies, airlines, but they're all global in their outlook, and they all have this problem. The competitive landscape is quite rich. A lot of people trying to solve this problem. The way I see it is that there'll probably be maybe 2 or 3 companies that will win out in the end. And it'll be ones that solve key problems. And I think friction is going to be one of them. The consumer doesn't care about a blockchain. They won't even they don't know what it is. They don't want to know what it is. They just want to know, does it work? Can I do what I need to do? And make it easier for me to do it. And if blockchain enables that, happy days. So where we see digital identity going is authoritative sources. They're going to be really, really important. That means government agencies opening up the data they hold to allow verifications to take place. Privacy protecting by design, so that the security and integrity of your information is protected. Verifications that are automatic, so that your data can be kept fresh, so it doesn't ever go out of date. Trust. You build trust because the organizations who are managing your information are seen to be doing what they should be doing, not doing what they shouldn't be doing. And lastly, you've got control of your information. You can see how it's being used, where it's being abused. So let's talk a little bit about tokens and the model that we're building. So we're Europe-based. I live in Ireland. We're looking at a foundation model based in Switzerland, regulated by FINMA, partly because the landscape here in the US is, how can I say it, unclear in relation to what is a token, what is a security, and how does it all pan out. We would love to see clarity on this. It would make life so much easier, not just for me, but for everybody probably in this room. And building essentially a model that generates a token from the foundation. Using zero-knowledge proofs, we're going to create a token that is privacy-preserving. It will compete with the likes of Monero and Zcash, but it will be better because it's faster and it will be cheaper. So it'll be full Turing complete, and it's lightweight, which means it'll run on a mobile phone. So I don't need to share stuff when I don't need to, and it won't kill my phone because I have to spend a minute processing the computing requirements in order to generate the proof at the end of the day, which is what happens today with the existing solutions. We spend a lot of time on the tokenomics. This equation, MV equals PQ, I'm not an economist, but boy, have I been spending time on this. How to control the velocity of the token, because the velocity of the token is ultimately what could kill your token. If it's able to move around too fast, meaning your velocity is really high, the intrinsic value of the token drops because the PQ is pretty constant. It's the value of your economy. So how do you add friction to the process? You think about cash. Cash in your pocket is a very friction-heavy asset because it sits in your pocket. You go to a store and you hand over money, it sits in a register. Then you go to the bank and it sits in an account. So there's friction at every place in the cycle, which slows it down, which gives it its intrinsic value. If you could move cash at light speed, which is what we're talking about here, suddenly the value of that asset plummets. So how do you get stability into the system? And this is what we spend a lot of time at.
Question. Are you finding it hard to build liquidity in your system, in your token?
Yes, is the answer. And we will all struggle with this, every single one of us. And he who figures the answer out is going to succeed. But if you have, or at least aware of the problem, you have a chance of coming up with a solution. So our token is a utility token, and we're looking at using tokens as the incentive to get the identity providers, the reliant parties, and the processors into the ecosystem. So using it purely for its utility. So it's a multifunctional token. We use discounts. We use non-staking work tokens for the processors that sit in the middle, and essentially trying to control the flow of these tokens to the various parties. So again, the velocity of it doesn't go off the charts. If I give you an example of how rich this potentially could be, we're working with the Passport Office in the UK. This is a £500 million revenue stream every year for them if they wanted to open their data up. Now that's just one passport office. 65 million people, And if you start to connect every passport office in the world into this ecosystem, and you start to think about the revenue-generating opportunities, not just for travel, which is what their primary purpose is today, but for other things, it suddenly gets very, very big very, very quickly. But you go for a long time flatlining, and then you go off the charts. That's just the way it is. Our token, this is going to change for sure. Every couple of weeks we look at it and go, no, the market is going to require something different, but it's going to be roughly along these lines. So investors will get 50%, we'll divvy up a little bit for our strategic partners. Companies that we want to absolutely be our early adopters, some big banks, big telcos, big utilities, and so on. We're raising 3 million euros now. We've half of it committed, and we need the other half. And it's an equity round. It's got nothing to do with the ICO. And once the platform is finished, because FINMA rules require this, again, to make sure we don't fall foul of the Howey test, the platform and the asset is built, you're not falling into the securities realm, we'll figure out what we're going to do with the actual ICO itself. So in summary, we're building a zero-knowledge network that is privacy-preserving, operates in real time, high assurance. We reckon you could see €1 billion of transactions through this within 3 years. And we're targeting Q1 next year for the launch. We have 15 people in the company today, based in Ireland and in Tenerife in Spain, and a very rich team of entrepreneurs, with a severe shortage of women, I might add. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be outside, and you can come and have a chat at any stage.
Anyone has any questions?
How are we going to compete with Civic? So Civic today, again, I'm always reluctant to make direct comparisons, but Civic today do not verify your credential with an authority. So we are targeting real-time verifications with authorities. So whenever I present a driving license or a passport or any kind of identity document, we will verify that document right now at that moment in time with the authority. We will not take an attestation that is 1 year old, 2 years old, 5 years old, just because 5 years ago it was put on the blockchain having been certified as valid. Credentials get revoked all the time. They get lost all the time. Your identity is dynamic. It is not static, yet we treat it as static. And in a blockchain world where we have linked identities, meaning I link to my car, I link to my home heating system, I link to my fridge that buys gallons of milk or whatever it is, I need to know that all of those things in terms of a chain of trust tie back to a verified KYC'd, fully AML compliant identity at that moment in time. And Civic cannot do that today, nor Sovereign.
So you're saying that will be an ongoing thing? It's constantly verified with the authority?
Constantly verified, in real time. It is the only way to do it.
I was just wondering if you guys are working with any of the standards bodies, verifiable claims with the W3C or distributed identity.
So my colleague, Patrick Curry, Patrick writes standards. So he's involved with ISO. He's got some involvement with NIST. And we'd love to have more involvement.
Well, I just checked the list, so I hadn't seen you guys in at the secret parties. So happy to have you there.
Cool. Thank you very much.